Hello, friends. We welcome you to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Television. Chapters is the show that profiles authors, editors, and publishers in the regions of West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. I'm Eliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. We are talking children's writing, and we are talking the Huntington Museum of Art and children's writing with our guest here today, Suzanne Alexander, and we're talking to her about her latest book, Through Children's Eyes, Exploring the Huntington Museum of Art. And Suzanne Alexander has been a docent for the Huntington Museum of Art for over 10 years. She's also been an outreach teacher for their Museum Making Connections program. Throughout her career as an elementary school librarian, language arts teacher, children's librarian in a public library, and a book columnist, Suzanne has shared her love of reading and art. She currently writes stories and articles for children and young adults and is a member of the West Virginia Writers Organization and the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And in her free time, Suzanne enjoys traveling, which often creates inspiration for her writing. And we're pleased to have Suzanne Alexander with us today to talk to us about her new book, Through Children's Eyes and the Huntington Museum of Art. So Suzanne, good to see you. Welcome to Chapters.
Thank you very much.
This is a beautiful book, and we'll get into it here in just a second. But I wanted to ask you first, for some of our audience that may not be familiar with what it is, what is a docent, and what do they do in terms of helping out at the Museum of Art? Because I know you've done that for a long time.
Yes, they are docents are teachers' guides, and what we've done, mostly we give tours and discuss art with children from preschool all the way through middle school at the museum.
And you've been doing that for how long now?
About 10 years.
So what are some things you enjoy about doing that?
I love introducing art to children. They get so excited about it. They're very enthusiastic about the museum, and it's great fun to take them around and introduce them to the elements of art, color and line and shape and texture. And what makes the museum unusual is not only do they have wonderful art objects, but they have a tropical plant conservatory. The children love that, with plants, and we even have blue poison dart frogs and axolotls, which you'll have to come to the museum and find out what those are. And again, there's art in nature, so children really love that. And they even have a firearms collection, which the boys love.
Oh, I'm sure they do. So how many kids or groups of students come through, let's say, in a year? Because I know there's probably certain times of the year it's busier than others, but how many groups do you think you all normally see come through there?
There are thousands. I wish I had brought the statistics with me, but there are thousands of children that come through the museum from many counties, not only in West Virginia, but also in Ohio and Kentucky.
And I think a lot of people don't realize until they come to the museum. And I can remember coming, when I was in junior high school, we came down. A lot of people don't realize that Huntington has the only art museum in the state. Mm-hmm. That this is it, and it's right here, kind of on top of Ritter Park. And a lot of people don't realize that, I think, until they come and see what's there and the different kinds of features and exhibits and things that go on there.
It is a gem of West Virginia. That's all I can say about it. It is a gem. We're so very lucky to have it. And they have wonderful programs. And they not only have tours throughout the year, even in the summertime for children, but they have camps in the summertime. They also have Saturday kids art programs on Saturdays that are free to children. And also they have classes in the evenings for both teenagers, adults. So they offer a lot, and it is, as I said, it's a gem of the community.
Yeah, it really is a special place. So tell me, I want to know how you came to writing this book. Where did the ideas come from? I mean, obviously you've worked at the museum and given tours and things, but when did you decide, I'm going to take some of that and write a children's book, and what was that process like?
I love to write, and I've always loved to write. Ever since I was in 6th grade, I remember writing a letter to the editor about pet turtles, and it was published. Anyway, I thought, oh my goodness, there are wonderful catalogs that the museum has. For example, Through American Eyes, wonderful catalogs that they have of their collection. And I began to think, they don't have a children's catalog. They don't have a children's book about the museum. All the things that we cover as docents is taking the children around, the elements of art and how we apply it to the works in the museum. I could put this into a book. and that's how it got started.
So, how long of a process was this for you? I know you and I talked a few moments ago before we started taping that this has been going on a while, but just
Yes,
how
it
long has it been
actually
going
been
on?
years. I would write something, I would decide whether or not it was, feasible, and also I wanted the items, all the objects actually, are from the permanent collection. And so I wanted to make sure that that's what I would have in the book. And I also wanted to go back and delve into some of the artists' past, their childhood. Like Minnie Atkins' Blue Rooster is in the book. And when she was young, she grew up on a farm, and she'd feed the animals, and that was inspiration for her to start carving the animals. She's a folk artist, and a folk artist means somebody who's not formally trained in art, and they just have a love and a talent. And she would carve, and so slowly this began to develop. And also Jonathan Cox, one of his sculptures is at the museum, and he used to build boats with his father when he was young. And so I want to make sure that children knew that art is something that you could start when you're very young, and then maybe develop it as you get older.
Yeah, very good. I love this book is beautiful, but both inside and out. I wanted to ask you first about the cover, because we see some different artifacts and actual animals on the cover here. Tell us a little bit about what we're seeing on the cover. Who is the picture here right on the front? It looks like a Native American in the gold frame. Who's that?
It is Osceola, a Seminole warrior who actually, as you can see, he's very brightly dressed, and he was equally colorful in his whole life. So he was perfect for this. Again, his portrait is in the Firearms Gallery.
Very good.
Yes.
And then we see to his right is this kind of a wooden grain colored object. What is that?
That is the Discovery, the sculpture by Jonathan Cox, and it looks a little like, has some resemblance to his past of boat building with his father, as you can see by it. And also there's the blue poison dart frog. They're very popular at the museum. They're one of the live creatures in the Tropical Plant Conservatory, the animals in the Tropical Plant Conservatory. And they're very popular with the children. Just telling them poison dart frog, they want to know poison. Why do they have poison on their skin?
Yeah. You had them you had them at poison. You had their attention at poison.
Yes, poison.
And I like how we've got the one frog in the lower left corner, and then the one frog up at the top towards the title. It's just a beautiful cover. I wanted to ask you about a couple of people that we see mentioned here, and you talked about a couple of them. One person who I found was really interesting was George Catlin, or Catlin, I guess is how you pronounce his name. And what struck me as I was reading about him is that, I think as kids, I'm thinking elementary school, we always have those units in first and second and third grade where we talk about the Native Americans. We talk about Thanksgiving, Pocahontas, and the big feast that they had for the settlers. But, Catlin really kind of emphasized that from, both from his upbringing, and kind of his artistic. Tell us a little bit more about him, because I found him to be really interesting.
Okay. George Catlin was interested in Native Americans because he discovered that one was living on their property, and that his mother was captured when his mother and grandmother were captured when they were children by a Native American tribe, and they were treated very kindly and returned to their family. And his mother told him about this, and that really stayed with him. And when he decided to become an artist, he decided that he wanted to concentrate on Native Americans because that interested him a great deal ever since his youth. Again, that's another thing about talking about his youth.
Yeah, he was really, really interesting. And there was a character that you write about, Osceola.
Right, that's the portrait on the front cover and in the book.
And he was interesting because he got sick.
Yes.
So at some point in his life. So what was his illness, and sort of what is Osceola's kind of lasting legacy today?
Okay, well, for one thing, he tried to give the Seminoles their land back in Florida, and what he did was he decided that he would do his portrait. And Osceola was very sick, actually, when this portrait was done. He died, Osceola, 2 days later after the portrait was done. And it actually is part of the Indian Gallery collection in the Smithsonian.
Interesting. So he's got a connection sort of outside the own Huntington Museum of Art. Very good. Yeah, I just thought he was an Catlin was interesting, and I loved Osceola too. Tell us a little bit about the Tuma Near Eastern Gallery, because you mentioned the firearms collection being a permanent exhibit there, but then we have the Tuma Near Eastern Gallery. Tell us a little bit about what's there, what's in there.
That's very important. Doctors Omaima and Joseph Tuma donated this collection of Near Eastern objects to the museum. They even had the ceiling created in Damascus, Syria, and shipped to the museum. So it's really, just a jewel in the museum, this room. And I talk about the different objects in there.
And one was the rug or the carpet. And I love your connection, because you said if you've seen Aladdin, you might think that's what this is, but a little different than the Aladdin. Tell us a little bit about that.
No magic in this carpet. It doesn't fly. But when I was writing this, I wanted children to be able to relate to the Near Eastern collection, to the objects that are in the Near Eastern collection. And we don't know who the artists were for these objects, and therefore I thought, well, I can't talk about the artists in their youth. Why don't I think about how the children, this would relate to children? And I thought, the magic carpet in Aladdin. I thought back to Aladdin and the 1001 Nights, I think it is called. But anyway, I also thought that we have a couple of oil lamps, one that looks very much like the one in Aladdin where you rubbed it and the genie came out. So I thought, children will just love that.
Very good. I love that story. There's just so many good stories in here, and we'll come back to a couple of them here in just a minute. But I wanted to ask you about Headline Books, because I know they're the publisher of this book, and you've worked kind of closely with them. How did you find Headline Books, and what's it been like working with them to help you bring your story to collection?
It's been a very good experience. They're a small independent publisher. I don't really even say small. They're a pretty good sized independent publisher in Terra Alta, West Virginia, and they were looking. I was at the West Virginia Writers Conference, and they were looking for works by authors, and I submitted it to them. I pitched the book to them, and they really liked it, and they accepted it last fall, and we worked on it. There were changes that had to be made. The museum was wonderful. They provided the photographs for the book. And then Headline Books has a wonderful art director, Ashley Teets, and also a graphic designer, I think it's Lucas Kelly, it says in the book. And they did such an amazing job. You pointed out the cover. Amazing job throughout the book.
I mean, it's a stunning book. I mean, when I picked this up and looked at it, and flipped it over, I mean, it's just beautiful. The color and the font, everything is just wonderful. We mentioned earlier you're a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. Tell us a little bit about that organization and what they're all about.
Okay, it's a national organization, and they have conferences, both regional and national conferences, and they promote writers. They help them with their developing their skills. They're an excellent organization, and if anybody wants to be a children's writer, this is a great organization to join.
And how do you join? And I know that in talking with you too, that you've actually gone to some conferences that they have. So first off, how would someone join the organization? If we've got someone in our audience that's thinking about doing a children's book, how do they join, and is there a membership fee, those kinds of things?
Yes, there's definitely a membership fee. You go to www.scbwi.org, and it will tell you about membership and how to join. Even if you're not a published author, you can join as an associate member, I believe.
Okay, and you've been to some conferences
yes,
too.
Yes, I have.
Where have you been, and what was that experience like? What did you do there, and what did you learn about children's writing and illustrating from going to those conferences?
Well, I went to the New York City one for a weekend, and that was a little overwhelming. They had over 1,000 participants.
Wow.
But the one I really enjoyed going to was the West Virginia, Delaware, Maryland area regional conference in Buckystown, Maryland. I think they're moving it this year closer to Baltimore, but there's a great you meet all sorts of writers. You can discuss your craft. You can learn more about the craft of writing. It's a great organization.
So someone who, and I know you're also a member of the West Virginia Writers Organization. What would you say is the value in being involved in those organizations? If you're a published writer, or if you're just getting started, or maybe you've just got an idea, you haven't even done any, outlining or drafting, what would you say is the value in someone you're looking into, maybe not these two organizations, but really another writing organization in their community?
Again, you are with a community of writers, and you feel that you're with your tribe, that they understand what you're going through. They can sympathize. They can help you with your craft. You can sometimes go and get your even a few sentences critiqued by someone at a conference, at a workshop, at a conference. So you do learn a great deal, and it's so important that you can discuss writing with somebody who understands what it's like to be a writer.
Absolutely, I think that's an excellent point. It's really an opportunity to be with your kin, so to speak.
Yeah, with your tribe.
With your tribe, absolutely. I wanted to ask you about a couple other people in your story, or in your book. We talked about the poison dart frogs. This really isn't a person, but the chocolate tree.
Oh, I love the chocolate tree.
Tell us about the chocolate tree. I love the picture in here because not only is the picture beautiful, but if you stare at it long enough, you think, "Ooh, I could eat that chocolate tree." So tell us a little bit about what the chocolate tree is.
Okay, what's amazing to children is chocolate does grow on trees. Unlike money, chocolate grows on trees, and the process they're very intrigued with, that these pods that look like squished up pumpkins actually produces the cocoa beans inside, and that they have to harvest them just like a crop, and harvest them, take out the beans, and then go through a very long process. I made it very short in the book because it also involves fermentation, which I didn't want to have to deal with how to explain what fermentation was. But they're dried, they're roasted, the cocoa beans, and then they're ground into the chocolate.
There's another image in here that I liked, and that was the black bear vase. Because I think, thinking about children and what would catch their attention, I love it because the way the bears are kind of positioned on that. But there was kind of an interesting story behind the person who created that, Minnie Adkins.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about Minnie and what this kind of this black bear vase really symbolizes.
Well, she, for one thing, is actually she did also the Blue Rooster in the book. She designed them. She did not go ahead and create the glass herself, because she's normally a wood sculptor. She works with wood. She whittles away at wood. So she designed the black bear vase, how it should look, and then Pilgrim glass, which sadly is no longer in this area. The designer for that created the glass from Minnie Adkins, designed the cameo, which is basically glass layered atop of each other and then carved in different manners. The woman who carved the black bear vase actually used, I think, a sandblaster. And I've seen Corning glass. I've been to the Corning Glass Museum, and they actually use a diamond wheel when they carve through the glass. So there's all sorts of different techniques.
So if you would rub your finger over those bears on the vase, what would it feel like?
It'd be raised. It's in relief. They're
Okay.
in relief.
Okay, very good. I just thought that was such a
Yes,
neat eye-catching.
yes.
And then, of course, back to food, because that always catches my attention. I loved the glass, and it looked like the Christmas candy that you get, the swirled Christmas candy, but Edward Reiter created that. Tell us a little bit about him and what does his orb here with the it's not candy, but it looks
No,
like
it's glass. It looks like peppermint
It looks like
candy.
peppermint candy,
Yes.
and that caught my attention. Food always does.
I don't know much about his background. I couldn't find much about him, but I could find about the process of creating paperweights. That's a paperweight. And children really love to learn about that, because I tell them that once upon a time, before air conditioning, teachers would leave their windows open, and they would their papers would blow everywhere. And somebody came up with the idea, maybe somebody had, the glass factory had dropped a blob of glass on the floor and thought, this could be used for something. And sure enough, putting it on top of papers. And people love to make things pretty. And sure enough, somebody decided, oh, I could make that glass very decorative. And what they do is they blow long canes of glass and then cut them up and then blow glass around whatever they're, for this case, it's the canes of what looks like peppermints around that glass. And then it becomes not only something to put on top of papers, but it becomes a beautiful art object as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. And I saw that, I was reading it not long after I saw the chocolate tree photo, and I thought, ooh, peppermint candy. But then I realized it was just
Right,
an image.
right.
Did anything surprise you? Not only do we have so many great pictures and illustrations here, but we learned so much about the people who created these. Anything that really surprised you or shocked you about researching these people, or about sort of delving into their lives or their inspiration for doing what they do? Did anything surprise you or really stand out to you about all of that?
Just as you mentioned, George Catlin was really interesting. I actually found a biography by Anne Rockwell for children about George Catlin, and I thought that he was so interesting because he went out with, I think it was George Rogers Clark, after the Lewis and Clark expedition. He went actually out to the West with him on another expedition and drew the pictures of many of these tribes that were no longer existence. They had dissipated a short time after he went out to see them on the expedition. So that was intriguing. And there's a huge book. The museum has it. A number of libraries can even get it for somebody, called the Indian Gallery, with the portraits that George Catlin has done. And it was amazing.
Yeah, he was really a fascinating
Yeah, he was
person.
fascinating to me also.
I really
Yes,
enjoyed learning
yes.
about him. So, Suzanne, for someone who is thinking about writing a children's book, or maybe just has an idea, hasn't gotten to the drafting stage, any advice you would give them, any challenges you would say in writing not only nonfiction for children, which is kind of what this is, but or historical fiction or history nonfiction, but just anything, any challenges or advice you would give them as they start thinking about setting on this journey of writing a children's book?
First of all, I think joining an organization like SCBWI would be wonderful. Also, find a local critique group or start one of your own with people who like to write what you like to write. There's a number of them in this area. Well, Patchwork Writers is one. We have the Cheshire Cats writing group here in Huntington, which is just for children's writers. And I would say starting or joining a critique group would be, and there's even some online.
Okay, very
So
good.
I think that would be my recommendation.
So don't be afraid or shy to reach out and say,
definitely
I'd
not.
like to get involved or join this group, but here's what I'm working on. What do you think? That kind of thing. Very good.
Exactly.
So my next question, what is Suzanne Alexander working on next? So you've got this beautiful, visually stunning, and such an interesting and well-written book about the Museum of Art here in Huntington. So what are you working on next?
Okay, well, one thing that I'm also looking for a home for one of my books, The Tip of the Tail, and it was actually won first place in the children's book category in the West Virginia Writers, and I'm looking for a home for it. And I'm also working on another one called Nests of Eggs, which actually combines STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, in this case science, with language arts, with prepositions. And that's my project for the moment.
Very nice. So those people that think you're either left-brained or you're right-brained, the science can work with the prepositions.
Oh, yes, definitely, definitely.
Sounds like a great project. That sounds great. So Suzanne, in our final moments here, if anybody in our audience wants to get in contact with you to talk to you about Through Children's Eyes, or maybe talk to you more about the SCWBI or the Cheshire Cats, or they just want to get in contact with you, how can they get in contact with you first of all, and then where can they get copies of your book?
Well, probably get contact through me through maybe the museum, and also the book is going to be available, and they'll have autographed copies at the museum, and also some local bookstores, but the museum gift shop definitely will have plenty of copies.
Very good. So Suzanne Alexander has been our guest today here on Chapters. We've been talking to her about her new book, Through Children's Eyes, Exploring the Huntington Museum of Art. And we've talked about this, we can't emphasize it enough, how visually beautiful the book is, both outside and inside, and how interesting interesting the stories are. And Suzanne, I know you've worked on it for a long time. It's a wonderful representation of children's writing and illustration, but also telling our children some interesting stories about people and art. So it's a fantastic book. Congratulations,
Thank
and
you.
wish you all the best with it. And as you get those other two published, we'll have you back on to talk about it.
Thanks so very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
We also want to take a moment to thank the staff and management of Empire Books and News for providing our on-site support and assistance today. We encourage you to come down to Empire Books and News and pick up a copy of Suzanne Alexander's newest book, or any of the other books that you've seen featured here on the program are available for sale right here at Empire Books and News at Pullman Square in Huntington. So whatever reading taste you need satisfied, come down and talk to the staff here at Empire Books, and they can get you taken care of with whatever you're looking for to read. And if you'd like to stay in touch with the program via social media, we've got 3 ways to make that possible for you. The first is our email address, which is right here at the bottom of the screen. It's lp4@zoominternet.net. We do ask that you please list your name and the town or community in which you're writing from so that we can keep track of that correspondence. But we promise you we do read and respond to those emails, so please keep that feedback and those comments coming. If you're not an email user, but maybe you like to watch things on YouTube, we've got a chapters page through the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube, and that address is right here at the bottom of the screen. All you need to do is type that into your search browser, and from there, look for the chapters tab, and we've got all of our author, editor, and publisher interviews from 4+ seasons of tapings and interviews archived for you there as well, so you can go check that out, comment, and interact with people who've watched the program. We know a lot of you've done that, and we appreciate that, but that is where you can find the repository of all of our episodes here on Chapters right there on the YouTube page. And if you like to use Facebook, we've got a Chapters page on Facebook as well. All you need to do is go to facebook.com/chapters. On the Facebook page there, we have more of our most recent author, editor, and publisher interviews archived for you there as well. So you can you can smiley face, you can share those episodes with people in your Facebook groups and your Facebook community, and also interact with other viewers of the program through the comments field. So if you like Facebook, if you like YouTube, if you like email, we've got a variety of ways for you to stay in touch with the program right here on Chapters. So we encourage you to stop by sometime and see us on YouTube, see us on Facebook, or send us an email to the email address that we mentioned earlier. And that's going to do it for us this time on Chapters, but please come again next time. And in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.